Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining our events dedicated to the participation of communities and different actors in the rebuild and renovation processes. It's been the fifth meeting where we are discussing different approaches and practices to the participation processes. We are discussing the present issues that are now present in different communities in Ukraine. I'm very grateful to our speakers who joined us today. Today, we're going to talk about the interaction of community with organized stakeholders, institutions, business, civil society, and housing cooperatives or apartment building owners associations as an example of self-organizations of the citizens at the local level. Let me remind you that we are at SADIS, Leads with Europe program. And now I would like to give the floor to Ivan Verbitsky, the director of SADIS think tank. He will tell a couple of words about the project and announce the call where we invite the representatives of the communities to cooperation. Thank you very much, Maria. I'm very happy to see all the participants. It's difficult to speak about rebuild right now. It's difficult to talk about the things connected with the future, but we understand that we shouldn't wait only till the end of the war and only then start dealing with the topic of rebuild and renovation, because we need to rebuild a lot of things, houses, schools, etc. And despite different ideas, a lot of people in the country work a lot already to rebuild their communities or to improve them. A lot of work is being done in the communities. We believe in decentralizations as the process which makes our country more resilient. And within decentralization process and within the communities, we believe that engagement of different groups of citizens, participants of the communities, cities, towns, villages, to planning and setting up the priorities for post-war rebuild and strategic planning for the development of the communities is the way that helps us to find the best solutions on one hand. On the other hand, it helps us to take into account the needs of all social groups living in our communities. It makes us stronger. It helps us to attract funding and to implement those ambition plans of rebuild that we have. That's why we are very happy to work on this project, and we will try to help to do our best to help the communities in the planning of rebuild and development. On our website, there is an announcement that we are looking for 10 communities and we will be able to work with them closely during this project in 2023. Also, my colleagues will leave the link in the chat. So if you are a representative of such community or you know people who might be interested, please share this link with them. There is a possibility to apply until the 20th of March, and we would be really happy to cooperate with you. I'm grateful to everyone who joined our conversation today. It's the 5th out of the 6 events. In 2 weeks, we're going to have 6 and final events. And today, I wish everyone a fruitful meeting. Maria, the floor is yours. Thank you, Ivan. Yes, I can see that there is already a link in the chat. You can follow this link and check everything which is needed to apply as a member of community. Before we start, I suggest to make a small round of introduction in chat. Please write who you are, which institution and community you represent, and to provide more details about your activity within the context of cooperation with business, different institutions, authorities on national, local level. So please leave a couple of phrases in the chat regarding that. I'm very grateful that today we have an opportunity to speak with very powerful and experienced speakers in their field. We're gonna talk to Vasily Rashko, the representative of Tustin CSO, and we will discuss the interaction of different actors of different levels, from national to the local level, with civil society, in order to protect the cultural heritage in our communities. We're gonna talk to Volodymyr Vorobey, Director of Economical Development Agency Acknowledged Networks, on how we can interact with business and how this cooperation can be sustainable, how this cooperation can be at the level of partnership. Also, we're going to talk to Taras Perhun, the representative of Institute Development of Dragobich Town, on how to interact with self-organized communities of citizens, like a housing cooperative, and why such type of cooperation is very important in the community. I think our conversation today, our discussion today, will be very interesting and fruitful. We have speakers who are great experts in their field, so I suggest that we start. If you have any questions during our discussion, you can write them in the chat and I will read them out, or at the end of the presentation, you will have an opportunity to raise your hand and ask them, voice them out. Each presentation will be up to 15 minutes and it will be followed up by Q&A session. After 3 presentations, we have a common discussion and common Q&A session. So I suggest that we start. Vasily Rashko, the head of Tustin CISO. Please, we are ready to listen about your experience. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you very well. Can you see my presentation? Yes, great. Thank you. I have a time challenge because in each minute I have to tell about 1 year activity of Tustin. So I want to tell you what is Tustin, the main concept of development, how this organization has been developing, how the level of development can be measured, and what are our further steps. So you can see this rocks. There was a rock fortress in the Middle Ages. My father, Mikhail Rashko, was doing his research on this fortress. It was a unique place. It was a medieval skyscraper. Now we're talking about Tustin as one of the top touristic destinations in Ukraine. We did the 3D reconstruction. There was a museum open and big festivals took place. There is a good infrastructure developed around this place. So we're talking not about the rocks, but about the environment around traditional Boyki village. Boyki is a Ukrainian ethnic group. So it's all about this place and the life of traditional Boyki village. We're talking about sustainable development, long-term perspective, sustainable business, and responsible tourists. We need to manage the project and maximize the profit, but also we have to preserve the source of our income and minimize the impact on the heritage and natural resources. We're talking here about heritage tourism, and its basic principles is the authenticity, preservation of the resources, interpretation, and establishing the partnership with local communities and different stakeholders, because it's a big amount of work and it's impossible that one person is dealing with all that. It should be a team. And it is important to be able to propose a lot of interesting things to the visitors and to preserve the resources at the same time. It is important to understand that we're talking about competition in the modern world, and usually the competition is based on some primary things, but it is important to develop not only the primary factors, but also the secondary factors. So here we're talking about our differentiation. It's about our ability to tell our story. I'm working a lot with heritage, and my story is about community, being able to use its unique story as a source of differentiation. So what is our direction of movement if we want to be able to create a historical space as in Europe and preserve the landscape? Then we need to do the relevant things. So the model of eco museum, when you are creating some kind of distant museum, which is open at night and nothing happens, it's one thing. But if you want to create a village museum where people are actually living and working, it's another story. So how we were trying to achieve this? Of course, the fortress is the most important thing. We were trying to do the 3 model of the fortress based on the sketches made by my father, and we were telling about this in the museum. The creation of the opening of festival was a huge step forward. Let me show you a short video. There were up to 10,000 people. It was a 3-day festival held on the huge territory around the rocks. And then we cleaned the territory and to make sure it's proper, and only the nature and the rocks stays there after the festival, after everyone leaves. It's very important to go beyond the museum, the Middle Ages, the rocks itself. The village nearby is a small village, but the stories collected by people, the stories of people who were witnesses to stories happening there, like people who spoke to the people who were in insurgent army, who were collecting some artifacts, became a very important part of museum work. So we were trying to convert this all into inflow of tourists, and the buildings, the houses in the village were included to agricultural tourism, to natural tourism. So it helped us to attract the tourists and preserve the natural character of the place. So we tell the stories about Boyki village. We show like what the natural panorama looked like, where some important places in the village were. So it's a museum at the open air. So as to the space, we think it's a complex marketing product and we have to preserve it as is. So rocks and fortress is the main object of attraction. It's the National Heritage Monument. And the village, is a very peculiar place with traditional boyke architecture, and it's very important to preserve its nature. There is a big agricultural landscape. Tusten is the first place in Ukraine where this story of agriculture is preserved, and there is a general development plan, which is a source of development, the main basis of development. There are also some separate objects that we are trying to renovate. This building is the museum, the heart of the village, and some other objects, facilities, buildings, church, school. Also, there are some new buildings are being built within with traditional character, and we have consultations with entrepreneurs to make sure the new buildings they fit the landscape and they are of the same character. There was a chaotic trade happening in the village, and we tried to create a nice looking space. So we developed a single space for touristic infrastructure between the rocks and the village. We were trying to think what could be there. We think this should be something neutral should be built. We developed design code, and modern market is something that looks like this. It's a space for local entrepreneurs where they can cook food or sell souvenirs. It's a big platform or hub for local business. This is how it looks spatially. This is the master plan. We developed different zones. It's a detailed zoning that describes the character of the development there, taking into account the possibilities for the development of the village. At the same time, it is very important to preserve the things which are heritage, like landscape and cultural heritage. As to the community, we have tried a lot of ways of communication, like preservation of traditions, kolatki, haivki. These are traditional Ukrainian songs and rituals. Then creating a local newspaper that would be delivered to each house. There were some issues with illegal development in the village, so we were preparing the leaflets or newspapers we were distributing to the citizens, and in this leaflets we were telling about cultural heritage and why it is important to preserve it. And there was a very interesting experience with a church. There was this type of finishing, facade finishing on the church, and there was some rotting process under this facade finishing. And we were trying to convince people that we have to take this facade off to reconstruct this church in its initial condition. This idea wasn't met with enthusiasm, so we engaged some experts.
So then we teamed up and we helped them to recover. So this is how this church looks now. It looks beautiful. It looks how it should. Also, the church opened its gates to visitors, so it became one of the touristic sites. And unfortunately, today, due to the situation, it's not working, it's not open. Besides the medieval festival, we tried out different formats of historic festivals, and there were master classes, there were like field kitchen and other types of entertainments. So it was quite popular. Speaking about the challenges, first of all, we need to protect our our sites, touristic sites, our nature. We see that there is a problem of constructors who want to come and start illegal construction, building multi-story building, like a multi-story hotel. And this is, for example, not a nice thing to see. It is not something uh, that is welcoming to people who would like to experience heritage tourism. Another challenge which we faced, there was a fight against another constructor company that obtained illegal permission to build its buildings and facilities in the Natural Heritage Park. So, how to stop these illegal practices? First of all, it is making people aware, making people active. Shoot them. Yes, we can hear you. So in 2021, we've had 200,000 of visitors. Then during the wartime, the amount of visitors decreased a little bit, but still 200,000 of people of visitors is quite a good number for a small remote village somewhere in the mountains. We conducted surveys. We asked visitors as well regarding their satisfaction with the festivals, with locations, and also we collected their feedback. People are saying in these feedbacks that they like to be close to the nature. They like to be in this nature together with learning about the historic background of this region. Speaking about the community itself, it is really nice that our people started understanding that their heritage actually brings them income and new job opportunities. They become more proud, they become more aware, and at the same time, our community is not that engaged. They're still not engaged enough. And further development. So here in this graph, you see the amount of employed people in Tostan region, people who are employed because of this new project. Also, the natural park gets additional money coming from the special fund coming from grants and from the income which it gets from selling tickets. So, of course, we would like to get more support from the state. Of course, we would like to reinvest in order to provide more interesting products and services to the people who are visiting us. So, Tusten is a brand and it is an umbrella brand. It is a tourist destination. It is a is a cluster of touristic museums. So this brand is a comprehensive marketing product. Also, it implies companies and institutions, and the team of Tusten is the main driving force for this project. We consider this project as a full ecosystem, which is interlinked in a complex way, like all different parts are interlinked. One of the key elements of this project, of course, is historical and cultural natural resort, natural park. which became a good foundation for attracting tourists. And also, we have a company that sells products and services to visitors. During the war times, the company, which is called kind of headquarters for saving the heritage, became one of the main organizations in order to protect and defend cultural heritage and collect evidence in order to sue Russian Federation. We bring together different stakeholders that work together in order to protect cultural and historic heritage of Ukraine. So this is our dream to have younger people stepping in and continuing on our work, follow our steps. Thank you very much for your presentation and for your experience. And I think it's a very important project, specifically from the point of view of best practices of experience and of learning how to build effective cooperation between NGOs, so local population, different representatives of the business community, national uh, national like natural resorts, natural parks, and I would like to thank you very much for the job which you are doing, and I'd like to thank you very much for this experience which you are sharing. It is extremely important. You were saying that you had a newspaper, different festivals hosted, and organized cooperations and projects with business communities in order to set up a general code that would help all of us to defend and protect our heritage together. Oh, I'm very sorry. And just having this opportunity, I would like to thank Volodya for being with us, for supporting us. And, the key aspect is not the tools actually, but the outcome, the result, which people can really see and understand that it brings additional income. Yes, first we have to overcome a number of challenges, but then the system works for us, supporting us. Yes, thanks you for mentioning this. This is the part of the question which I wanted to raise. And while our participants are thinking about their questions to ask, I have a question of my own. So, when the community people can see that everything is working, when local businesses see that yes, this is a good project, and people see that changes have come and they're happy about these changes, of course they have something like a relief. They are happy to participate, they're happy to invest, to get engaged. And my question is to you, what would be three pieces of advice which you could give to your past self, to yourself in the past, in terms of how to start such a big project from scratch when there is still a lot of challenges, when there is still no evident outcome. So what would be the pieces of advice which you could give to yourself in the past, such advice that we could convey to some similar other projects for the future? Thanks. I'm very sorry. I'm connected with two different devices because there was some problem with connectivity. So when I started Tustin, when I was 24 years old, I didn't know what would be there. I didn't know how I would start it. I think that the first element is your readiness to start something new, something that you cannot really forecast. You cannot really plan exactly. It's just your decision that I want to do it, and I'm going to find a team for that. It's important to do not to do something one, because I have many different directions that support one another. You can't say that, okay, I'm going to do only scientific project or natural based projects. I'm not going to be engaged in communications, let's say. Everything has to be together, to work together. In fact, a very important lesson is that opportunity windows um, are not going to last forever. Uh, the Lord gives us the opportunity today, and you need to use it today. So we are responsible for what we are going to do to make, but also equally, we are responsible for the things that we are not going to do. We are not going to make opportunities that we didn't take. And it is important to have a big team of people because you can't do it all by yourself. It's just to have friends along your side, to have this important dream in your heart, building this fortress, supporting this beautiful natural reserve. And now it is extremely topical. It really speaks to the moment because it is about our identity, about our history, about recovering, restoring, rebuilding, about being, about knowing your roots, about being proud, about knowing who we are today and who were our um, predecessors, who they were, and what we're able to do in Ukraine, in Europe, in the world. And I see there is a question in the chat about challenges. There is a question about the major challenge, according to my opinion, for the natural reserve, specifically after the beginning of war. So the major challenge for me was the mentality, the cultural mentality that our people have somehow. And I started my secondary, not secondary, I started my one more higher education this year in order to learn more, in order to know more about how to change this culture, how to change this attitudes, this mindset where people think that, okay, we're just ready to take, we are not ready to give, we are not ready to invest. So, uh, like a metaphor, quite often we see businesses that just want to reap off the profits. They don't want they want to kill the chicken to steal all the eggs, like so to say. But they don't understand that you need to feed. Rather, you need to feed this chicken every day in order to have this eggs daily. And this is the biggest challenge for me because we need to find ways to inspire people to build new collaborations to start this new platform. So the biggest challenge for me is to learn to see wider, to accept better, to learn more about more opportunities. Thank you very much for this very inspiring. Thank you very much for your very inspiring presentation. There are more comments in the chat where people are thanking for this inspiring case, and they really feel grateful. So if you have any questions to Mr. Vasil, please do raise these questions now because he is not going to stay with us until the end. So there are no questions. So thank you once again for this presentation, and could you please share your contacts here so that if our participants do get some questions, they could contact you directly. Or maybe if there is a possibility to join your initiative on documenting crimes against heritage, cultural heritage, I think yes, it could be a very important collaboration. So the contacts you can see in the chat. Thanks a lot. So Mr. Vassel started a very, very important conversation on how to cooperate and communicate with the business community, with entrepreneurs in order to build partnerships in a sustainable way, peer-to-peer partnerships, where on the one hand, business is able to invest and support the development of the community, while on the other hand, have a possibility to have economic benefits. Today, we are going to hear more information from our next speaker about possible partnerships with business communities, with entrepreneurs. Maybe we will get also recommendations for the communities, where to begin with and how to proceed. So, Volodymyr Vorobey, the floor goes to you. Uh, thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm here today. My name is Volodymyr. I am the director and founder of PPV Network Organization. It is based in Ukraine and it is building uh, business ecosystems. So our attitude is to see development through the possibilities for economical growth, but also ecological um, approaches. I work over 15 years in this field, and I have different experience, and now I'm a kind of influencer. We build different types of clusters and platforms in Lviv. Um, and I would like to share my practical experience. So me, as a person who was working in many different processes in terms of intersectoral cooperation, I would like to share with you how to talk to business communities. I have a few practical advice on how to do that, because when people speak uh, about talking and working together with the business communities, very often these communities have a demandful or consumeristic approach, feeling or thinking that businesses have to give something to the communities and that's it. And first of all, communities need to understand that businesses and SMEs are not in a very good condition due to difficult taxing policies. So in Ukraine, we don't have a lot of businesses, and the idea that businesses have to invest to finance something, it is not very viable idea as it is, specifically during wartime. Businesses are interested in development and are very interested in having effective cooperation with the local government, with the local authorities, and with the local communities. So most of entrepreneurs are not that greedy, are not that like bad-tempered. No, they are interested in having good and effective models, because there are also toxic models. Toxic models, it is when the local government, without explaining anything, um, lim- limits business and makes a lot of problems for the business, that brings to conflict situations between business and communities as well.
And it results in sterilized communication. What is sterilized interaction? Is when the discussion happens in the way convenient to the authorities. It's the discussion between friends, etc., etc. And actually, it's not a very effective way of communication. It's what we call in Kherson region Potomkin's village. It's a very widespread type of communication, and when during the public hearings people kind of make a theater trying to portray that they're ready to talk, actually they are not interested to listen to any other opinion. But I see a positive trend that this type of communication is fading away slowly, and the elections at the level of the communities brought a number of proactive heads and managers, and the format of development alliance is a very good format for me, for example, when there are different stakeholders who come together for the sake of development of the territories or to find some solution. I can give you an example. When I come back from Belgium, there was a council of Lviv to promote Lviv was cancelled. Lviv was not always a touristic city. It was a city with beautiful architecture and great cultural heritage, but the city was not developing. So this council of competitorship was this format of dialogue when business and authorities and other stakeholders had a possibility to discuss what should we do, and there was a lot of ideas on creation of touristic alliance cluster and on the role of authorities. My first my first idea is the creation of the productive interaction, and it's very fruitful when we want to find a systemic solution to the systematic challenge. The second story is the institutional capacity. Very often, unfortunately, there is no person to talk to when we say we want to talk to business. There is no organization to support business. The business is automized, widespread, and very often the authorities want to organize a productive cooperation, but it's not possible. On the other hand, we had cases when authorities were not willing to talk to the business units, business communities, because sometimes their questions might be not very comfortable for authorities, but one should learn how to deal with uncomfortable peers with uncomfortable questions. Also, there is a practice, for example, in Lviv, when there are effective organizations that support business. At the same time, some parallel communal structures are being created that kind of jeopardize the work. Instead of engaging the organizations that already exist, the authorities create new communal structures. The budget is being allocated. They're not effective. We're paying taxes for this organization to work. At the same time, there is an organization already existing which is able to provide services and not being just an institution for the sake of being. For example, we have the Center of Support of Entrepreneurship, and we have a lot of questions why City Council is funding this when we have 35 organizations of support of business and 8 million hryvnias are being allocated from the budget to support them. So here is about the evaluation of efficiency, influence, etc. So institutional capacity is important when if you have the organization that represents the interests of business agencies, clubs, whatever, it's better to support them. It's better to develop their capacity and not to create some parallel structure. Also, it is important to be result-oriented from the side of the self-government authorities. Very often I see that local government authorities works like samurai. They have a way, but they have no goal. So the question is why they are doing what they're doing. Like, we are talking, but nothing is happening. So very often the strategies developed by the community, they look like sterilized version, which has no exact goals in the strategy. Like, for example, a smart goal that can be measured, etc. And we have always to be specific when we're setting up the goal. And very often, to me personally, it's very unclear what these processes have as their aim. Also, there were a lot of urban initiatives which are trying to engage business, and the representatives of business come and understand that it's only talks, but no real issues are being solved or discussed. And then they find another institution which is actually able to provide the solutions. So we should try to avoid window dressing, so to say, and when we are pretending to work with community, at the same time city development issues are not being actually, the decisions on it are not being actually made on this level. So we have to be open and transparent. So we should be result oriented, influence oriented, goal oriented. And the last thing is the level of influence and the level of questions. Very often, for example, business is approached with things like the child playground. At the same time, we have more pressing issues like illegal development, etc. So the level of the questions being discussed should be relevant, because business is about working places, it's about the level of well-being of citizens. And let me tell you a couple of stories. People love stories. So the story about the productive and not very productive interaction, it was very interesting to see how this happens. We were helping businesses with relocation as an agency, and different regions were helping to businesses to relocate. I'm talking about predominantly about Western regions. So Lviv region, local city administration created a channel in Telegram, and they were verifying the applications from the business, from the entrepreneurs, and they were giving the direct contacts, and people were able to communicate in the chat directly. It was a kind of a marketplace for the relocation. In Frankivsk region, there was another solution. The function of help with relocation was shared by business and civil society. For example, Teplomista, Warm City Association, they created initiative Say Business Now, and in cooperation with local authorities, local city council, which supported these initiatives. And all the applications were processed by these initiatives, and this was a trilateral structure, so to say, and they were helping to relocate businesses. It's a very interesting example when business was and civil society were dealing with relocation. It was a very wise solution, because in Frankivsk, it proved to be effective, and it was much better if it had been done directly by city council, city authorities. Also, prompt prelude renovation, the renovation of X factory you know, it's a huge innovative center being built in the Frankivsk. It's a revitalization of ex-Promprilant plant. There were 1,200 investors, and it's the biggest project of common investment in the Eastern Europe. The overall budget is over $30 million. It's a huge project, and they actually created the innovative center. City council decided to relocate their department of international cooperation there to be closer to innovation, to business. So it's a good example of interaction. They just relocated their office of their international cooperation department there to this innovational center, and in such a way they're closer to the needs. They are able to react quicker, to help, etc. It's very helpful. They can just go and have an instant meeting with the stakeholders, as it's a point of attraction for a lot of businesses, etc. I'm very sorry. Could you please speak a little slower, because we're having interpreting? Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. As to Ivano-Frankivsk, this was a great example, but also there were some negative examples. On the 23rd of February 2022, this night before the war, I was in Ladizhin, Vinnytsia region, and I was a facilitator of the strategy of medium and small business. And I was very surprised to know that the mayor doesn't want, personally he doesn't want to allow businesses in the ground floors of the buildings. Like, there are a lot of standard 5-story buildings in this city, and businesses, they just don't have place, they don't have premises, like for coffee shop, for some photo shop, whatever. And the mayor, due to his personal reasons, I don't know, just prohibits business to have the premises at the ground floors of the residential buildings. It's a negative example of cooperation, because there is no cooperation. Like, mayor is just killing the possibilities for business, and people are not happy because there is no access to the services. Like in other cities and towns, there are a lot of businesses in the ground floors. There are solutions, there are codes how to do it aesthetically, how to do it relevant to the city. But the mayor he just decided it should be like this, and he's not accepting any arguments. Local economical department is really supportive of this decision, but there is a problem with the mayor, and no one can convince him. Another interesting case I'm thinking of now, we were making a project in Uman with cultural heritage, and one of the elements of this project was the reconstruction of square behind the arsenal. It was a big city synagogue, and a memorial project was developed. And there was a problem in interaction, because there was a fast network restaurant. You know, people from Lviv know this this network of restaurants very well, and it was a problem of work with a big business which doesn't want to relocate their summer space from the memorial complex. Now they are at the territory of the ruined city synagogue, and there is no information at their place that there used to be a synagogue there. And there was a question on how we could relocate the restaurant and the restaurant terrace. And we were trying to find a solution. Finally, it was a kind of a frozen conflict, but unfortunately, there was no solution because this territory there were a lot of proceedings in the courts regarding this territory. So finally, we had to do the rebuild of the other square. There were no problems with the restaurants, etc. So we just shifted to the other project, and that's all. And this was a good example of reconstruction of the spaces in the historical environment. But why was I was talking about this example with the first restaurant? Because sometimes there are situations when lack of good communication with business could jeopardize the development of a great project planned by community. We are now expecting some mythical European funds who will come to Ukraine and support the post-war reconstruction. I also believe this is going to happen, but the question is, what are going to be our priorities? And communities have to be ready to communicate with business, with all the stakeholders. There should be different councils, there should be communication with the organizations that support business. We have to establish this communication channels right now, because these issues with business, with different stakeholders, they will happen, and some interest, there will be some conflict of interest. This is inevitable, and you have to be ready to establish the communication channels. And if those channels are already existing and they're real, they are made for real communication, not for the imitation of communication, then you would be able to solve these questions effectively without confrontation, scandals, and forcing, because it's counter-constructive and it delay projects and create problems for implementing of big projects.
Yes, this was everything that I wanted to say. I'm sorry, interpreter was speaking in the wrong channel. That's it from me, and I wanted to share with you these cases. If you have any questions, I am ready. Thank you very much. And summing up, I'd like to ask you the following. So you mentioned that it is important to set up connections and partnerships without confronting each other, but at the same time to be not sterile, meaning that to have a healthy environment where it is possible to talk about ideas, to analyze them, etc., to understand that these are not empty talks, but these are real possibilities, real projects that would bring an outcome. Also, you were mentioning about building platforms where alliances, partnerships, and institutions that could boost the business could work together. And another thing that seems important for me that you mentioned, this cooperation has to have a clear goal, understanding how communities and territories could be developed, have mutual expectations together with open support. It seems to be like a key principle that would support any cooperation, any partnership. Thank you very much for your comments regarding your ideas about building communication with the local authorities, local groups. So I'd like to ask you a question while participants are thinking about their questions. The question is the following. Speaking about communities that suffered from the war, communities that lost human resources, businesses that relocated, shut down, and it brings a lot of economical challenges for these communities. Do you know some programs or mechanisms that would enable communities to plan a future healthy and more attractive environment for the future to attract businesses, companies who could help with planning such plans and having such strategic thinking. And maybe there are some cases which you are already aware of where communities are thinking like this strategically. Well, first of all, I have to say that we have a ULITA program, another program where community friendly to businesses, where there were 60 different communities. We were speaking about economical development of their regions, and we have selected few communities whom we're helping to plan and look for investors for their project. But the key aspect is, first of all, to understand what you would like to do and why you would like to do it. Why would you like to develop this initiative? Because communities, they have, first of all, to prepare a portfolio of their projects, a package of proposals, so that you know how you would like to develop in the future. When opportunities will come, you need to be ready. You need to have this wider picture in mind of what you would like to become in order to have a healthy, a better development for the future. You need really to make the profile of your project before you get the money. I'm informing about different initiatives that we have. There are so many different programs. Goverla, Dobre, these are the names of the programs. Uh, these programs are well coordinated, and these initiatives are more or less well communicated. Another thing I would like to react to is that communities have to build communication with relocated businesses, with this business assets. Even if the communities that are under occupation at the moment, or communities where the front line is very close to, they need to have like telegram channels or some other channels of communications where this contact is being maintained. For example, we saw in Frankivsk city where there was relocation, where businesses came back to Kharkiv, to their own area, even if there was a case where, I don't know, their premises were destroyed by enemies' bombs, but it is still so much easier for them to operate in the area which they know already. And when the enemy retreated, they come back. They want to recover their businesses in their home area. So, it is important to maintain these channels of communication with the business representatives so that to have this doors opened for them so that they could come back at first opportunity, to ask them what would they need, how we could best to prepare for your coming back. So once they are ready to come back, community is ready to accept them, to make everything for the business to come back. And this coming back can be effective only when everyone is ready, only when uh, there is good cooperation between the community and between these businesses. So they have to be such channels which would maintain this communication about the future. So to have these dreams about the future, to ask what we could do, because these dreams is something that inspire people and they want to come back because at some point they don't want to leave. They don't want to leave this connection, this ties that they have. So unfortunately, a lot of communities and a lot of local authorities, they don't think about it. They are only engaged in surviving, which is of course very clear. It is easy to understand. But if you want to be proactive, you need to have this um, connection with your business because they will be the ones who would recover, who would rebuild um, your communities afterwards. I hope it was useful. Yes, thank you so much. I think it is very important to have these channels, as you say, and we had representatives of Mykolaiv city that they are developing a network of cooperation with those key active business players and other players, those who have left but they want to stay in touch. So they continue networking, they invite to online events so that this connection could be maintained. Is there a question? All right, if there is no, then I would like to ask a question of my own, the one which seems important to me. You are saying that it is important to maintain cooperation with the business, and sometimes business can be, or companies, they could be sometimes aggressive towards local authorities. Sometimes it happens. So could you give us examples or tools that would help to change the situation from uh, being like lacking communication between local authorities and business community, and how to transit from this void, from this lack of communication and trust, towards the situation where there is possibility for partnership, there is possibility for communication. I can picture quite clearly when you are representatives of the local authorities and you are invited to the business to the meeting with the SMEs, and you know that you'll come there and um, you will have to hear a lot of different angry words. Well, I think quite often we invent situations that don't exist. Very often communities are friendly, oriented towards SMEs, but quite often these conflicts they happen not because they did it intentionally, but because they didn't think ahead. They didn't think that there are other representatives, other businesses. They don't feel comfortable to leave this comfort zone. They feel much easier just to call your own friends, and they give you best price, and they know that this is their kind of circle, and they don't want to leave your comfort zone to find more opportunities. And this is the problem because it adds up as a closed circle into which no one fresh, no one new cannot enter. So the first piece of advice is to try to find new people, new companies. It is quite simple idea, but not often people are using it. The second piece of advice is to have a very clear goal for every meeting, any event, any action. So, what is the goal of this meeting? What are we going to discuss with this local authority representatives? So, Uh, Quite often it happens that local authorities invite SMEs representatives in order to check something in their checklist to say that yes, we had a meeting with SMEs, but it seems quite often that all decisions have been made prior to this meeting with SMEs. So this is what we would like to see. We would like to see that mm, the government, the local government, is ready not only to listen but to hear what is being said, to work together on the best solution. So, do you want to collect a list of problems named by the SMEs in order to find solutions for them on your own, which is also possible, but uh, please try to get to understand the goal of the meeting. Try to make them say what is the goal of the business of the meeting between the local government and the business community. And quite often there are toxic people or toxic businesses as well. So quite often we cannot fire people who are not very clear-minded. Sometimes we have crazy people, in the government working in their position, and we just have to deal with them. And they are creating this toxic environment sometimes. And in my mind, all of these things they can be solved or at least mitigated if you every time ask yourself like why we're doing this, what is our goal. And if you are able to have a meeting uh, like 30 minutes only 15 minutes online, not to have like a meeting just for empty talks. So don't waste people's time because this time is not free of charge. It is a part of a global economy, a bigger economy. So you need to respect this time. And quite often, representatives of the authorities they don't understand it. They don't realize that time is not a resource to be wasted. Thank you. So respecting time, understanding uh, the goal clearly and declaring this goal is an important part. And another important part which you mentioned is engaging into the process of decision making, right? So thanks a lot. I see there are no questions. I see a lot of thanks in our chat. So I'd like to thank you for your time and for your presentation, for your speech dedicated to the subject of cooperation with the business community. And let us move on. So moving from the business to the to the communities of apartment house owners. So I would like to invite our next speaker, Taras, who will speak about the work of associations of co-owners of an apartment building or apartment buildings in Drohobych city. Thank you so much. Let me share my slides with you. Good day, everyone. My name is Taras, and I am the manager on the regional development in the municipal organization in Drohobych city. And one of the field of my interest is the housing cooperative, their development, their cooperation, and the projects that they develop together. In this short presentation that meant to be a little bit longer, but since we have to be mindful of time, organizers asked me to reduce the number of slides, so I tried to do my best in order to share with you the key ideas. So speaking about support of housing cooperatives in Drohobici community, I should mention main institutions that are responsible for cooperation and support of such housing cooperatives. So first of all is institution in which I'm working in. This is a municipal institution, so-called Institute of this town of Drogobici. Then the managing office for economics of um, City Council of Drogobici, and department uh, for uh, for the local housing. So altogether, they are working in order to support housing cooperatives, support the project, and improve communication. So I would like to share with you first of all the statistics based statistics like on the first of January 2023, we can say that there is 199 housing cooperatives that have been registered in our town out of 227. And this is quite a good indicator. Speaking about the support programs in our community for support for housing cooperatives, uh, I showed here three different programs. The first one is co-financing of the complete refurbishment and fixing of multi-story buildings or multi-apartment buildings. This is where 70 to 95% of the construction works or refurbishment works are being covered by this program. The second program is the regional tender for programs of a project, organization of these tenders for the years 2020-2025, financing. It is financed from the city budget. And then another program is about energy efficiency for the houses in order to keep the heating expenditures down. There are new programs, new ideas, and I'm sure that we are going to hear more about these initiatives and programs. And even 2 hours ago, I've learned a new portion of information from this energy efficient program, which might be useful for participants present here. So let me begin with this project that you see on the slides. It is a project EU it is EU and UNDP project. We have been working together in the years 2015-2017. It is the project that is named Local Development, that is community oriented. There were around 100 applications submitted by housing cooperatives in order to take part in this energy efficient projects. 26 micro projects of these housing cooperatives have been selected and have been realized, and you can see on the picture in the slide how these projects were brought into reality. It is important to say that not only large buildings that comprise a very big number of apartments took part in this project, but also smaller buildings took part. Like, for example, this one, there were only 12 apartments. These people were initiative. They collected funds for co um, co-funding. The funds that they had to collect was not that big because it was only 5% that people had to collect, and everything else has been covered by the project. So these are different houses, different buildings that you see. In some houses, the windows were repaired. For example, this one, it is one out of two multi-apartment buildings which received improved energy efficiency. It was its roof and its foundation has been improved in order to improve the energy efficiency. So uh, local people or people who live in these houses, they shared shared the outcomes that they experienced. For example, the amount of gas that they consume decreased substantially, and the price of these apartments went up, which is quite good. And also the town got this new apartments.
Also, according to the documents, this projects are not implemented yet, but actually the works have been completed 100%. So this housing cooperative is the participant of Energy House projects. It's our first bird of spring, so to say, one of the first houses in Ukraine that has become a participant of the program. It's housing cooperative Perlina or Pearl. It's quite a big block of flats, and we did a complex thermal modernization, insulation. We provided the a thermal insulation of facade and attic. You can see it in the photo. I can tell in more details about the thermal insulation of the attic. And the most recent project, Housing Cooperative Solomia, 5-story building for 50 apartments, Grushevsky Street. And the works were completed in December, January 23. There was a thermal modernization of the facade, the replacement of windows and doors, and thermal modernization of the attics from the feedback of the citizens, of the people who live there. They say it has become much more comfortable to live in this house. It's warmer. And some pressing issues were solved, some problems were eliminated. As to the consumption of the energy, we will be able to check it closer to the summer, but preliminary people are happy with the result. There were no complaints about participating in this project during the war, especially. It's important. Well, actually, they filed an application before the full-scale invasion, but the construction works were finished during the war, and we managed to do this. Also, a couple of words about the regional competition for the local initiatives. It was opened by the Lviv City Council. It's a competition for small projects up to 500,000 of funding, but the housing cooperatives were very active. They took part in this competition. Due to their activity, a lot of projects were implemented. For example, the major renovation, for example, roof renovation, doors, entrance groups, and windows repair and replacement in the public areas. Unfortunately, because of the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the city council suspended the competition last year in the end of March or April. We were supposed to have the results of the competition, but because of the full-scale invasion, the competition was suspended, and we don't know what's gonna happen further, but we would really like this competition to continue because it's a good tool of implementation of the ideas of people who are the residents of blocks of flats and the participants of members of housing cooperatives. Thank you very much for your attention. I don't know, am I within the time? Yes, you were perfect in terms of timing. Thank you very much, Taras. If you have any questions to Taras, please write them down in the chat or raise your hand and ask him. Yes, may I add something briefly as to the communication and cooperation? We plan that in April, if everything is fine, we want to create something like a roundtable with the participation of the representatives of housing cooperatives, local authorities representatives, executive committee representatives, specialists in the field. We want to invite our colleagues from Lviv City Council, from the Housing Cooperative Department and Energy Efficiency Department. And now we are working on the agenda and on the list of the questions that are rather pressing, and the members of housing cooperative are interested to be solved. It's like we hope that finally some department of support for housing cooperatives will be created in our community. There are a lot of questions about energy efficiency, local programs of Drogobich City Council, and representatives of housing cooperative are able to take part in it to implement some ideas in their houses. Thank you very much. That was my question. Actually, what are the further plans and steps, and what additional interaction, cooperation do you plan with the members of housing cooperatives? We decided it's important today to discuss the interaction with housing cooperative as the unity of residents. We see there are a lot more cases in Ukrainian cities and towns, a lot more cases of destruction of blocks of flats. And if this block of flat is the property of housing cooperative, then the renovation and rebuild processes start much quicker, and they're more effective because people are able to consolidate quickly. And I think it was an important topic to discuss, the cooperation with housing cooperatives. Based on your experience, what is the city policy on engaging the citizens of the city to make them more active? What are the incentives for them to create housing cooperatives, and then what are incentives to the housing cooperatives in its turn to cooperate and not to be some formal organization? Do you have any mechanisms, and how do you engage active citizens and less active citizens in housing cooperatives to the common activities? Thank you for your question, Maria. First of all, we are trying to engage the citizens by showing the projects that were already implemented, like the projects we demonstrated in the presentation. I demonstrated in the presentation. Our latest project was finished in January this year, and I had a lot of questions and calls from other housing cooperatives, from the citizens, from my friends and people I know, and they asked how we can take part in this. What do we need to do? What do we need to provide? What is the mechanism? What is the amount of co-funding? Whether we would be able to do that? Who can do that? Is it done by subcontract, etc.? So lots of questions. If we're talking about some other forms of ownership in our community, then we have 3 managers, the housing and communal service, and it manages most of the blocks of flats in Drohobych. And if we compare this housing and communal service and housing cooperative, active housing cooperatives, because not all the housing cooperatives are active. Sometimes it's quite a nominal structure that doesn't demonstrate a lot of movement and development, but most of them, like 75–80% of housing cooperatives, are rather active. The citizens really want to improve their housing situation. They're trying to communicate with the local authorities, to take part in different programs, to implement their projects in co-funding, etc. So if we compare, housing cooperatives are much more active. And the first thing I tell when I come to the meeting of the members of housing cooperative, I tell them that all is in your hands. If you want some changes, you need to be the change maker. There is no communism, no Soviet authorities. Nothing is going to decide for you and do something for you. I live in a housing cooperative. It was created only 3 years ago. So it's a young housing cooperative, and there were a lot of challenges. But a couple of projects have been implemented since then. We are moving forward, and there are a lot of positive things happening. Thank you so much for your reply, for the presentation. Also, I would like to add, regarding the energy efficiency fund, Energo DIM or Energo House program is all about thermal modernization, energy efficiency. So the foundation launched a new program. The aim of this program is to help to rebuild the houses that were destroyed and affected in the course of battle actions. As far as I understand, we have here representatives of communities from the regions that survived, that suffered from active battle actions. There are people from the occupied territories, and I think this program might be of particular interest to them. And recently, the fund, in cooperation with our international donor, is launching a marketplace where housing cooperatives can find all the necessary information about the services, goods, contractors, subcontractors. You can leave your announcement there. So it's the latest news. I think it can be useful to someone. Thank you so much. Do you understand correct that it's a national-wide program? Yes, that's right, because Energy Efficiency Fund is a state establishment, and last year we signed a memorandum about the cooperation with European Union, and it was Olga Stefanishin, Vice Prime Minister, who signed this memorandum on the continuation of the activity of the Energy Efficiency Fund up to 2026. So we plan to work, we plan to develop and implement more projects. Thank you so much. Also, there is a question about the link to the marketplace. Can you send us the link to the marketplace, how we can find a marketplace? Yes, I will leave the link in the chat to the marketplace. A couple of hours ago, I read this news about the creation of marketplace and I checked it out and it was great, and I will share the link with everyone. Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Dear colleagues, any more questions? Also, you can see my contacts on the slide. You can put them down, write me, call me, contact me by any convenient means, and we will try to help you. I see that Volodymyr has a question, I believe. Yeah, thank you very much. I was very happy to see Taras because we had a common project. Well, it was the project supported by Ukrainian Cultural Fund. There were different formats of cooperation, and the Council of the Territories was supposed to be created within this project. It's an old enterprise which is mining the salt, and but it's not a very good condition. At the same time, it's a very interesting manufacture. There are wooden church. One of them is in UNESCO heritage list, so it's potentially a very interesting touristic area. And business, small business authority could benefit from it. Local authorities are not doing anything. They are not making any obstacles, but they're not helping really, and they are not able to solve any pressing questions with this territory. Tourism, local tourism is using this brand, but as a representative of Dragobich city, do you plan to develop this salt manufacture in Dragobich? Do you have any means to make the regional council to allocate some money to bring this place, to improve the conditions at this place? Thank you very much, Taras. Thank you, Volodymyr. From what I know as of today, first of all, the territory during the martial law is closed. So now the salt manufacture is closed. There are no tours, guided tours, as it used to be before the war. The territory is closed. I know that director, Mr. Oleg Petrenko, I spoke to him recently, and you know the story of the salt mine in Bakhmut.
Based on the current manufacturing rates, they told me it wasn't enough in order to carry out in the normal way. Their director told me that they have a lot of plans, but they didn't want to share these plans with me at that moment. And they had plans for development of the territory around that enterprise. And just like Mr. Volodymyr said, that this territory is quite interesting and has a very interesting from the perspective of tourism. And this factory, the salt making plant, the salt making factory is located in between two beautiful churches that are extremely ancient. They are built of wood. So there is an idea of building infrastructure around this like tourist attractive areas. So there is an idea to have tracks, like trekking roads, to build parks and parking lots, and we have a concept of developing this salt making factory territory, and there is a document that has been already developed by the team of students of the institute, that is based on the input from all parties in a way. So I remember that there was an initiative group from this salt making factory. They submitted their application to the program, and the city joined the program to receive up to 25% of coverage of expenditures by the program. So the territory was improved around the salt making factory. I can't tell you anything more about the territory directly because the director, Mr. Petrenko, didn't want, and he actually couldn't disclose his plans because the factory is a state strategic object. Yeah, it's very interesting, exemplary discussion which we are having now because I'm one of the authors of that initiative document. I'm an author of at least 20 pages of that document. So the question is that now this territory is not being taken care by anyone. Yes, there are owners, but there is no authority or there is nobody that would be working on this territory, improving it. So we can't wait until the war is end. So my idea is that instead of making small changes like little changes like changing a little bit, improving the road, a little bit improving the lighting. Instead, there should be a very good council, a substantial body, an institution that would be coordinating all of the efforts together with the management of the salt making factory, together with the local community. And this is just a very good example. If there is no leadership in this situation, it will not be improved. You see, the hotel would be built in this way without respecting any construction laws. The river is not in a good condition. The area is not being taken care by anyone. So I'm just wishing you to have leadership, good leadership around this project. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Volodymyr, for your question and for your comment. Taras, would you like to react to this comment? Well, I'm agreeing full with every word of Mr. Volodymyr that yes, we shouldn't wait for the war to end because we could wait for a long time while this area will not reconstruct it itself. So thank you so much. Thank you for your presentation and slides, and thank you, Volodymyr, for a question. I think that it is a good piece of advice not only to Drogobechi town but also for other communities. It is when a lot of resources are being invested, human resources, financial resources, a strategic document is being developed and nothing is happening afterwards. It increases this lack of trust of all of the players that were engaged, of the business community, and for the future, mm, they don't want to join the effort. So if you engage them, then something has to happen after the project is developed, because otherwise it disrupts this intention, this energy. I was also in Drogobechi this past summer, and I saw the salt making factory, and I would like to join Volodymyr with my wishes to establish this council for this territory, because project implementation requires having leadership on top. So thank you so much for your comment, and I'd like to turn to other participants. Maybe you have questions to both speakers. Maybe you have some reflections, some feedback, some comments regarding today's conversation on how to uh, cooperate, collaborate with any actors, beginning with the civil organization and ending with housing cooperatives. All right, so no questions. So then I'm not going uh, keep you here to keep you here waiting. That is why I would like to thank very much for being here, for your links, for your comments, for your ideas. Thank you very much, Taras. Thank you very much, Volodymyr, for your time. Thank you for being part of this event today. And we'd like to thank you for the projects that you are implementing today. And we hope that our communities will become more and more developed, stronger, resilient, and would be able to take more and more interesting projects and develop them well. So thanks everyone. I'd like to thank you for being here, and I'd like to motivate you to take part uh, in the um, in this program, in this contest. So submit, please do submit your projects that are relevant for your communities, and the best projects will be selected. Also, I'd like to invite you to our next event where we are going to speak about experience of cooperation with different communities, and also how to solve conflicts, how to set up dialogues, and how to overcome conflicts of interest. We are going to learn about different cases, uh, for example, from the ecological field. Also, we are going to share some projects and cases of social infrastructure transformation project. So please join our next meeting. It is going to be our last meeting under this current project. So I'd like to thank everyone here and wish you a good day.